These 5 states in the United States will collapse soon. If you live in any of these states, you definitely need to stick around for this video. It's a bit shocking. But while some states are booming, others are facing some pretty severe challenges. The reasons behind their decline are downright surprising. Now, let's dive into these states and find out what's really going on. And hey, let's aim for 500 likes on this video. If you live in California, this might come as a shock to you. Coming in at number 5 on our list of states that will collapse soon is none other than the Golden State itself. Despite its sunny reputation, California is grappling with some serious issues that are threatening its stability. First off, let's talk about the budget shortfall. California is staring down a staggering budget deficit projected to reach $58 billion by fiscal 2025. That's right, $58 billion. The state has been hit hard by declining home sales and reduced business investments, thanks in part to higher interest rates. This financial squeeze is putting immense pressure on public services and infrastructure projects that are crucial for the state's future. But that's not all. California's economy, one of the largest in the world, is showing signs of strain. The high cost of living continues to drive people away, and this outmigration is shrinking the state's tax base. Fewer people means less tax revenue, which only deepens the budget crisis. And speaking of people leaving, did you know that between 2020 and 2022, over 500,000 residents moved out of California? That's 500,000 folks packing up and heading to more affordable states. Now, let's address the environmental disasters. California has always been prone to wildfires, but in recent years, the frequency and intensity of these fires have skyrocketed. In 2023 alone, wildfires burned over 4 million acres. That's an area larger than Connecticut. These fires not only devastate homes and communities, but also cost billions in firefighting efforts and recovery. On top of the fires, California is also dealing with severe droughts. As of now, more than 95% of the state is experiencing drought conditions, with many areas in extreme or exceptional drought. This water crisis is hitting agriculture hard, an industry that contributes over $50 billion annually to California's economy. Farmers are struggling to irrigate crops, and the long-term outlook for water availability is bleak. Let's not forget the housing crisis. The median home price in California is around $800,000, which is more than twice the national average. This has made it nearly impossible for many to afford a home, leading to a significant homelessness problem. In Los Angeles alone, the homeless population exceeded 66,000 in 2023. That's a 12% increase from the previous year, and a clear sign that the state's housing policies are failing to keep up with demand. And there's more. California's aging infrastructure is in desperate need of upgrades. Roads, bridges, and public transit systems are deteriorating faster than they can be repaired. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave California a C on its infrastructure report card, highlighting the urgent need for investment. If you live in California, these challenges might sound all too familiar. From the soaring cost of living and massive budget deficits to the environmental catastrophes and infrastructure woes, it's clear that the Golden State is facing an uphill battle. It's a state that has long been a symbol of opportunity and innovation, but without significant changes, it could find itself on the brink of collapse. At number 4, on our list of states that will collapse soon is the Empire State, New York. Yes, you heard that right. Despite its iconic skyline and bustling city life, New York is facing some serious issues that could lead to a collapse. First, let's talk about the financial troubles. New York is struggling with significant budget deficits. The state has been spending more than it earns, and this imbalance is taking a toll. For instance, New York City alone projected a budget deficit of nearly $10 billion over the next few years. This gap is driven by high costs related to healthcare, social services, and pension obligations. The state's total debt is nearing $150 billion, putting immense pressure on its finances. Now let's dive into the issue of outmigration. Over the past few years, New York has seen a steady stream of residents leaving the state. In fact, from July 2021 to July 2022, New York lost over 300,000 people. That's like losing the entire population of a city like Pittsburgh in just 1 year. High taxes, the cost of living, and the lure of sunnier, more affordable places are driving this exodus. When high-income earners leave, they take their tax dollars with them, exacerbating the state's financial woes. Speaking of the cost of living, New York City is notorious for its sky-high prices. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan is over $3,500 a month. For many, the dream of living in the Big Apple is becoming unattainable. This high cost of living affects not only housing but also everyday expenses, making it difficult for average residents to make ends meet. Let's move on to infrastructure. New York's infrastructure is aging and in desperate need of repair. The state's roads, bridges, and public transit systems are showing their age. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave New York a C on its infrastructure report card, pointing out that nearly 10% of its bridges are structurally deficient. The subway system in New York City, which millions rely on daily, is plagued by delays and maintenance issues, causing frustration and economic losses. Environmental challenges are another major concern. New York is increasingly vulnerable to extreme weather events. Hurricane Sandy in 2012 was a wake-up call, causing $19 billion in damages in New York City alone. Rising sea levels and more frequent storms threaten coastal areas, requiring expensive mitigation efforts that strain the state's budget. Healthcare is another area where New York is feeling the pinch. The state has some of the highest healthcare costs in the nation. Medicaid expenses alone account for nearly 40% of the state's budget. As the population ages and healthcare needs grow, this expense will continue to balloon, putting further strain on state resources. Finally, let's not forget the economic disparity. New York is home to some of the wealthiest individuals in the country, but it also has a significant population living in poverty. The gap between the rich and the poor is widening, creating social tensions and economic instability. In New York City, for example, the top 1% of earners take home over 40% of the city's income. This inequality is not just statistic, it translates into real-world problems like inadequate access to education, healthcare, and housing for many residents. At number 3 on our list of states that will collapse soon is the Keystone State, Pennsylvania. Despite its rich history and pivotal role in America's past, Pennsylvania is now facing a slew of issues that could lead to a significant decline. First up, let's talk about the budget. Pennsylvania has been struggling with long-term budget deficits for several years. The state's fiscal woes were temporarily masked by federal pandemic assistance, but now that those funds have dried up, the budget gap has re-emerged. As of 2023, Pennsylvania is grappling with a structural deficit of around $2 billion. This deficit is primarily due to stagnant revenue growth coupled with rising costs in healthcare, education, and pensions. Now let's address the issue of population decline. Pennsylvania's population has been on a slow but steady decline. In 2022, the state saw a net loss of nearly 40,000 residents, continuing a trend that's been going on for the past decade. This population decline is driven by several factors, including a lack of job opportunities, high taxes, and a shrinking industrial base. The state's aging population also contributes to this issue, as younger residents move out in search of better prospects elsewhere. Speaking of job opportunities, Pennsylvania's economy is facing significant challenges. The state's once thriving coal and steel industries have been in decline for decades. While there have been efforts to diversify the economy, the transition has been slow. As of 2023, Pennsylvania's unemployment rate stood at 6.4%, higher than the national average. This economic stagnation is hitting small towns and rural areas particularly hard, where jobs are scarce and opportunities are limited. Infrastructure is another area where Pennsylvania is falling short. The state's roads, bridges, and public transit systems are in desperate need of repair. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave Pennsylvania a D on its infrastructure report card, highlighting that over 18% of its bridges are structurally deficient, the highest percentage in the nation. The state's transportation network is vital for its economy, and these deficiencies are causing delays, increasing costs, and hindering growth. Environmental issues also pose a significant threat. Pennsylvania is the third largest producer of natural gas in the United States, and while this has brought some economic benefits, it has also led to environmental degradation. Fracking has been linked to water contamination and increased seismic activity, raising concerns among residents. Additionally, Pennsylvania's coal mines have left a legacy of pollution, with abandoned mines leaking harmful chemicals into waterways. Healthcare costs are another major burden for Pennsylvania. The state has one of the highest rates of opioid addiction in the country, which has strained its healthcare system and public resources. In 2022, Pennsylvania reported over 5,200 opioid-related deaths, a grim reminder of the ongoing crisis. The state's aging population also means higher healthcare costs, further straining the budget. Education is yet another area of concern. Pennsylvania's public schools are facing funding shortages, leading to disparities in education quality across the state. Rural and urban schools, in particular, are struggling to provide adequate resources and support to students. The state's higher education institutions are also feeling the pinch, with rising tuition costs and declining enrollment numbers. If you live in Pennsylvania, these challenges may feel all too real. The state's budget deficits, population decline, economic struggles, crumbling infrastructure, environmental issues, and healthcare crisis paint a worrying picture. Pennsylvania has a proud history and a resilient spirit, but without significant changes, it could be heading towards a troubling future. If you're living in Alaska, this might be tough to hear. At number 2 on our list of states that will collapse soon is the last frontier, Alaska. Despite its vast landscapes and natural beauty, Alaska is grappling with some serious challenges that threaten its future. First off, let's talk about the budget. Alaska has been dealing with a structural deficit since 2014. The state's expenditures have consistently outpaced its revenues, leading to a budget gap that is being filled by using its reserves. However, this is not sustainable. As of 2023, Alaska's budget deficit stands at approximately $1.5 billion, and projections indicate that the state's rainy day funds could be completely depleted by 2027 if the deficits continue. One of the primary reasons for this financial trouble is Alaska's heavy reliance on oil revenue. Oil production has been the backbone of Alaska's economy for decades, but it's a double-edged sword. Oil prices are highly volatile, and recent years have seen a decline in both production and prices. In 2022, oil revenue accounted for nearly 85% of the state's budget, but with declining production and fluctuating prices, this revenue source is becoming increasingly unreliable. Adding to the financial woes is the population decline. Alaska's population has been steadily decreasing as people move to the lower 48 states in search of better opportunities. Between 2020 and 2022, Alaska lost nearly 9,000 residents. This may not sound like much, but for a state with a small population, it has significant implications. A shrinking population means a smaller tax base, which further exacerbates the budget issues. Now, let's talk about the cost of living. Alaska has one of the highest costs of living in the United States. The remote location means that goods and services are more expensive due to higher transportation costs. For instance, groceries in Alaska cost about 50% more than the national average. Housing is also pricey, with the median home price in Anchorage hovering around $350,000. These high costs make it difficult for many residents to make ends meet, leading to increased outmigration. Infrastructure is another major concern. Alaska's vast and rugged terrain poses unique challenges for infrastructure development and maintenance. Many remote communities rely on aging and inadequate infrastructure. The state's road network is limited, and many areas are accessible only by air or sea. This makes transportation expensive and unreliable, affecting everything from daily commutes to emergency services. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave Alaska a C on its infrastructure report card, highlighting the urgent need for investment and upgrades. Environmental challenges also loom large. Alaska is on the front lines of climate change, experiencing rising temperatures, melting glaciers, and thawing permafrost. These changes are not only impacting the environment but also the state's economy. Thawing permafrost is damaging infrastructure, including roads and buildings, leading to costly repairs. Melting sea ice is affecting marine life, which is crucial for the state's fishing industry, a major economic driver. In 2022, the fishing industry contributed over $5 billion to Alaska's economy, but climate change threatens this vital sector. Healthcare is another area where Alaska faces significant challenges. The state has some of the highest healthcare costs in the nation. Access to medical services is limited, especially in remote areas, where residents often have to travel long distances to receive care. The state's Medicaid costs are rising, adding further strain to the budget. Additionally, Alaska has one of the highest rates of alcohol and drug abuse, which exacerbates healthcare and social service needs. If you live in Alaska, you know how tough these issues can be. The state's reliance on oil revenue, population decline, high cost of living, inadequate infrastructure, environmental changes, and healthcare challenges paint a worrying picture. Alaska is a place of incredible beauty and resilience, but without significant reforms and investments, it could be facing a very uncertain future. So what do you think? Is Alaska on the brink of collapse, or can it overcome these hurdles? Stay tuned as we reveal the final state on our list facing serious problems, and topping our list of states that will collapse soon is Illinois. If you live in the land of Lincoln, this might hit close to home. Despite its rich history and bustling city of Chicago, Illinois is facing some daunting challenges that could lead to a collapse. First and foremost, let's talk about the debt crisis. Illinois has one of the worst fiscal situations in the country, with a staggering $144 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. That's right, $144 billion. This pension crisis has been brewing for years, as the state failed to adequately fund its pension system. The situation is so dire that pensions now consume nearly 25% of the state's budget, crowding out spending on other essential services like education and infrastructure. Speaking of budget issues, Illinois has been running a budget deficit for years. As of 2023, the state is facing a $3 billion budget shortfall. This ongoing fiscal imbalance has led to a cycle of borrowing and debt that seems almost impossible to break. The state's credit rating is the lowest in the nation, making it more expensive to borrow money and further exacerbating the financial woes. Next, let's discuss the population decline. Illinois has been experiencing a significant outmigration problem. Between 2020 and 2022, the state lost over 100,000 residents. People are leaving in droves due to high taxes, economic uncertainty, and a lack of job opportunities. This exodus shrinking the tax base, putting even more pressure on the state's finances. In fact, Illinois has lost population for 9 consecutive years, which is a worrying trend. Taxes are another big issue. Illinois has some of the highest property taxes in the nation, which is a major factor driving people away. The The state also has a high overall tax burden, which includes income taxes and sales taxes. In 2022, the combined state and local tax burden was around 12.9% of income, one of the highest in the country. These high taxes are not only pushing residents out, but also discouraging businesses from setting up shop in Illinois. Let's talk about the economy. Illinois has a diverse economy, but it's been struggling with slow growth and high unemployment rates. As of 2023, the state's unemployment rate was 7.1%, significantly higher than the national average. The manufacturing sector, once a cornerstone of Illinois' economy, has been in decline for decades. While there have been efforts to attract tech and service industries, the transition has been slow and uneven. Infrastructure is another critical issue. Illinois roads, bridges, and public transit systems are in desperate need of repair. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave Illinois a C on its infrastructure report card, highlighting that nearly 10% of the state's bridges are structurally deficient. Chicago's aging transit system also requires massive investments to modernize and maintain, which is a significant challenge given the state's financial constraints. Environmental challenges are adding to the state's woes. Illinois is dealing with increased flooding and severe weather events, which are putting a strain on the state's resources. The cost of dealing with these disasters is rising, further straining the budget. In 2023 alone, severe weather caused over $1 billion in damages across the state. Here is another area where Illinois is struggling. The state has high healthcare costs and access to quality care is uneven, particularly in rural areas. The opioid crisis has also hit Illinois hard, with over 2,300 opioid-related deaths reported in 2022. This ongoing public health crisis is stretching the state's healthcare system and resources to the limit. If you live in Illinois, these issues may sound all too familiar. The state's debt crisis, budget deficits, population decline, high taxes, economic struggles, crumbling infrastructure, environmental challenges, and healthcare issues create a perfect storm. Illinois has a proud history and resilient people, but without significant changes, it could be heading towards a very difficult future. I hope this video gave you a clear picture of the challenges these states are facing. Now, if you're thinking about making a big move or just curious about more affordable living options, I've got the perfect video for you. Click on the video showing on screen to know 10 cheapest English-speaking countries to live or retire, just under $300. Believe me, it's going to be worth watching that video. See you there.